Next up, please welcome Nick Kleverov, Chief Creative Officer of Native Foreign, Pippa Lambert, founder and producer of Hellcat, and Fred Grinstein, co-founder of Machine Cinema, in conversation with Vivian Schiller, Vice President of the Aspen Institute and the Executive Director of Aspen Digital.
All right. Hi. Hello again, everybody. So we're going to continue this morning's theme about AI and art, and now we're going to be turning to filmmaking. So I'm sure all of you know that AI and filmmaking is a pretty hot topic right now. A lot of this concerns from actors about their likenesses, writers about their creative output, and pretty much anybody in the filmmaking industry about their jobs. It's a big issue, and one that we're going to talk about this afternoon, but not so much now. So hold that thought. What we want to talk about right now is the incredible power of AI in the creative process and as a creative partner, because there's some pretty mind-blowing things that are happening, and you're going to see some of those in just a minute. So we have these, as you heard, these three incredible folks, Pippa, Nick, and Fred, to talk about how AI is appearing in the films we see, and you're going to see a pretty extraordinary short in just a minute. So Pippa, I am going to start with you. So you are a longtime producer of films. Most of them produced the old-fashioned way, generally speaking. So what led you to do a series of films about AI? What was the inspiration, or I should say, who was the inspiration?
Well, that's a good question. So this was a creative itch that I've been trying to scratch for 20 years. And I started out in documentaries in 2000, so very super traditional, and using all the technologies that we had available at the time. And I was traveling, met somebody, they played me a CD that was completely bonkers. It was called Diane McGregor, He Speaks His Dreams. And on this CD, there were 12 tracks, all various lengths between 30 seconds to 10 minutes. And it was a guy from the 60s called Diane McGregor who spoke his dreams. Not like the nonsense that we might say, shut the door, or put the cat out. Complete dreams with very articulately laid out. He was very verbose, and the way that he spoke was very lyrical. And I thought that, who is this guy? And this seems like a phenomenon. And as I looked into it, Harvard professors had studied this guy and talking about, wondering how he was able to narrate what was going on in his mind when he was asleep. And I thought this is a great documentary subject to dive into the person, but also to make it a mixed media piece where we would visualize the dreams. So I hopped on a plane and went to LA and New York to interview people who were around at the time. Diane sadly was no longer with us. This is 2005. And then I got to the tricky part, which is visualizing the dreams. We had this perfect audio bed with the words that he was saying, and I thought this would be an amazing challenge for an animator. But animation's expensive, and I needed to find a grant or a financier, and I was running out of time. I was about to start quite a big job, and I ran out of time, and I couldn't find the money for it. But I kept in contact with the rights holder. You know, it's a documentary, so you need to have everything buttoned up, and I kept in touch with Steve Venwright from Canada for 20 years. And I'd phone him up every now and again. Hey, Steve, has anyone managed to do this documentary yet? We'd agreed on the vision, and no one had. And then last summer, AI was making these incredible amounts of progress. And I was trying to figure it out myself as a filmmaker. We were just coming out of the strikes. It's a really difficult time in LA and in filmmaking all over the world. But I knew that this felt like a very clean and obvious way of using the technology. And we had the prompts from Diane, and then it was finding the right visual artist to interpret them using the technology that was available. And Fred and I are old colleagues. We've known each other over the years, and I would jokingly say that he was putting AI propaganda out on LinkedIn, which, and it was videos that I was joking at, Fred. videos that he really appreciated and the artists that he thought were doing incredible work. And I was following all of them, and it was great stuff. And I was thinking, I need to find someone who'd be interested in interpreting someone else's work, not putting themselves into it. And cut to Nick Kleverov, and he'll talk about the work that he'd put together. But we very quickly came together to work on this, and hopefully it's going to become something bigger, but we should show the film.
Yeah. Well, let me just turn to Nick,
sorry,
and then
Nick.
I'll prompt the film. So, Nick, Pippa comes to you with these extraordinary audio recordings.
Yeah.
So, what made you want to take this on?
Well, I also at first thought it was spam because it was like a very long email. I was like, oh, what is this? And you know,
AI can help with that.
Yeah. Well, being in this space, you do get approached a lot. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of it is basically like, hey, can you just do this way cheaper for me than normal? And like, that's not interesting to me. What's interesting to me is how we can use this technology to tell stories in new ways, to explore imaginations in new ways. And so as I got to reading Pippa's very long email, I was like, oh, this actually sounds kind of interesting. And then, you know, she put some links, and I started reading this BBC article about Dion, and then started listening to the audio. I was like, oh yeah, this is really interesting, because the guy's voice is so textural and vibey, and you can hear like the car horns in the background. I mean, it just like feels like very mid-century New York. And I think that is also where the AI tools can shine, when they are paired with this like human just authenticity. And so that's, yeah, we basically decided that we were going to start with one, and then go out to 3, and then, yeah, I mean, we'll talk about kind of our next steps for the project after.
All right. Well, we've teased everybody long enough about Diane McGregor and this film. So let's play the film, and then I'll come back and have some more questions
Roll
for
the
you.
tape.
The singular trait of all dreams seems to be their privacy. True for everyone, except Dion McGregor. By day, he was a New York lyricist. By night, he was the world's most prolific sleep talker. This is one of his dreams.
There were 4 of us sitting in that room, and we decided to go out and get the Sunday paper. We opened it up, each of us took a section, and disappeared. Oh God, I disappeared into the book section. Jimmy vanished into sports. Oh, it was awful. Yes. How do we get out? How do we get out? How do we get out? Yes. Skips in politics. Yes. Political page. Just swallowed us up. It didn't hurt, really. It felt sort of dusty and dry as we were pressed in. I don't know. We can talk to each other. As I walk through the pages, I can walk through the pages. I can sit in the ads. I guess Skip and I have it the best. We can hop from section to section. Yes. It swallowed us up before we got the sections apart. The paper's all together. We can move. Yeah. Oh, yes, everything's changed since then. The ads are different. You'd think at least it would change. We'd be in this week's paper. No, we're not. We just keep going on. It's terribly dreadful. Yes. We are stuck here until somebody opens these sections and lets us out. Could you believe it? I don't know, at least we're not in there by ourselves. At least we're not in there by ourselves. At least we're not in there by ourselves.
So there's so many amazing things about this. I mean, we could do a whole other panel on the fact that this guy he's sleeping and he's saying all these crazy narratives. I mean, there's a whole series of them, right? Anyway.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So, all right, so you have these incredible recordings.
Yeah.
We get to this film. I want to understand a little bit better. So, I mean, you're also a director. You also are a director of the traditional sort.
Sure.
So, how did you collaborate? You used Sora, which is a product of OpenAI. But what is the role of the director in this? How much of this? How do you collaborate with an AI in this? Explain how that works.
That's a great question. I do think we are entering a new kind of era of creativity where, and I'm not just saying this because I came up as an editor, but I do think the editor is becoming the new director. Your vision for what the piece is going to be is, basically the DNA of how you make the shots. You start making shots, putting them into a sequence, and you're kind of building as you go, especially in something like this. There are instances where we want to be a little bit more straight-laced to like a storyboard and this and that, but in like an art project, which is what I consider this to be, I let the voice guide me, and I knew that I wanted to go in with it staying true to the time period. And so the kind of like North Star that I came up with was Twilight Zone meets Mad Men. And everything that I was making was like, does it fit that criteria? And at first I started actually playing with some of what Diane was saying as some of the prompts, and then building upon that. Those weren't quite working out. So then it was more about trying to paint the picture of, the narrative that he's crafted in his dreams, which is, these four guys who were sitting around one Sunday, went to go get the paper, and then they got swallowed up in the newspaper. Yeah. And, just basically approaching it like, okay, I did it linearly in the sense of, all right, well, let's just start at the beginning. The actual dream is also much longer. So that was the first step, is cutting it down into something a little bit shorter, and then basically building out shot by shot. And then, in many senses, it's the way I've always created, which is, you just get a first draft out, like, let's just cover the whole piece with something. And then I had a temp music score, and it wasn't kind of working. And then Pippa actually brought Marius in, who's, an incredible composer. And that also just like changed it and took it to the next level. And then that inspired me. And then the horns and the kind of noir of it all got me thinking about different shots. And then it was just a matter of, what I love working with AI is you have an idea for a shot, you kind of get that, but you also get a bunch of other ideas kind of given back to you.
So is it like a series of prompts like you would use when you're writing something with a ChatGPT?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, each shot is just this kind of long prompt of a certain person and what they're doing and what the setting is and what happens. And it's really an exercise in linguistics. I mean, I would say, I'm actually ESL, so I'm an immigrant, and English is my second language, but this prompting stuff has actually gotten me so much better at the way I communicate through words and my vocabulary in general. And so, I would think I'd want one shot, and then it would give me some version of that, but then something twisted would happen, and I was like, oh, that's actually super interesting. Like, yeah, let me explore that and go down that path for a little bit. So it was a bit like a collaborator. However, each of the images, probably dozens, or in some cases probably hundreds of iterations to get the creative direction that I wanted. So I think that is still absolutely paramount. Many people could sit down with the same tool and they're going to produce wildly different results.
Yeah. So you are the director, but it really is a collaboration with the AI, with Sora also giving you creative visual ideas that you hadn't necessarily anticipated.
Yeah, it's like it's a collaborator, it's a camera, it's like a second unit director that is very interesting and just kind of goes off and creates all sorts of things that are
goes
kind of
rogue
like
sometimes.
Sometimes, but I like that.
Yeah.
I like that for
That's
the
great.
creative process.
That's wonderful. We'll come back to you in a minute. Fred, so you're something of an evangelist. Or a propagandist, I guess, as Pippa would say, for AI and film.
It was a difficult time.
Which is an interesting place to be in this moment. So first of all, just give us a big picture. Where do you see the industry going in terms of AI, using AI in the creative process in the way that Nick is?
I mean, you mentioned like a lot of concerns before that may or may not be in our scope.
We'll come to those in a minute.
But I think but I think to answer your question, I think one thing I'm not concerned about is creativity, and I think when you see a film like this, And I think me and my collaborator, Mindo, that you'll meet later, we have a community called Machine Cinema. We have about 700 members. The stuff we see every single day, it's an explosion of creativity. And I think for all the reasons that you're starting to understand the process of how that works. And I think, it's funny, this propaganda piece we keep coming back to, which is that Pippa family. It was me reposting another film of Nick's, that there was just a sentence in the way he described his film, that here's a film that would have never been made. And I think that's something there's a lot of power in that sentence, which is that we talk a lot about democratizing artists. There's a lot of people that are now getting access to storytelling because of these tools. It's also democratizing ideas. And that, if you have a friend who's a musician or a painter or a poet, they get to sit around and crumple up that piece of paper or strum that guitar and change their mind many times along the way to coming up with the thing they want to make. For the 100 years of filmmaking, we've never been able to do that. That's never the way it worked. We have to build entire industries with executives and infrastructures where we take bets and speculate on things that may turn out to be terrible movies. So we're now in a place that we get to watch our ideas. It's the expression that our friend Chad Nelson mentioned at Upscale recently, that we get to sort of have ideas and see them, and we get to experiment with them. We have this collaborator. So that is a huge shift into how this medium gets to get made. So to say, where do we see it going? We're introducing an entirely different muscle in the creative process. And I do think the industry's already been changing quite a bit. I think in a lot of ways the timing is uncanny in terms of where it's landing. I think there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of advocacy that's emerging. And I think that's actually the healthy reaction to the concerns, in my opinion, which is how do we sort of insert the human in the loop in terms of these wild innovations. But it's hard not to notice what's happening in the studios that are either privately or publicly embracing these tools. And I think we're trying to figure out the issues with them. But it's interesting to see an industry that's had to operate from these assumptions of timelines and horizons and resource intensivity. I think the least interesting thing is how cheap and fast it is. But I try to think in terms of, okay, now you're given this huge responsibility, this great power to move faster, move more cheaply. Does that mean we get to make more? Like when Netflix makes a $300 million movie that I don't think a lot of people in this room maybe saw, how many other movies could we have made with $300 million? How many other
100%.
filmmakers and film? And I think that's the opportunity that's emerging, is we get to interact with resources in a totally different way.
Yeah, I was struck, Pippa, in our conversations before the panel, you were saying you used AI for this, not because it was cheap, but because it was the only way to think about bringing this vision to life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't a tool I expected to use. I was obviously, struggling internally with how to embrace or reject or have an opinion about AI as it was coming in. And I found this, it was a way for me to make the film. It also seemed like a very clean way of working with the technology, because it was coming from, these are the words, there is something empirical here. Yeah. And then we're working with a robot through Nick, with a robot, as I like to call it, to visualize this. But to Fred's point about democratization, I was speaking at a media class in a school with a bunch of 16, 17-year-old kids, and I asked them about AI, and they said, well, of course, we're using it for homework, fine. But what do you,
Is it though?
Oral,
Okay,
it's fine.
another topic.
Another topic. But they were in the class because they wanted to get into the film industry. And on the one hand, it's, well, there are a bunch of jobs that won't be there, but you'll also be able to make your films. And you still have to use the prompts, and that was something that is of that filmic language, that's the education that you need to have. You can't just wander in, at least as the technology is now. You need to be able to articulate what it is that you want, and you might not have a director and a lighting rig there, but you still have to say where the light source is coming from and what the people are wearing and how many people there are there, and if they speak, what they'll say. So there is direction. So it's a shift of how you make something, and then ultimate democratization, how it's distributed.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamentals of filmmaking, of storytelling have not changed, and they're not going to change. So you need to know that. And to me, like a lot of the AI stuff that I see that is unwatchable is because they don't understand, composition or what the axis is, or, how to pace things out. So like every time I meet a student that's like, well, I guess I don't need to go to school anymore. I'm like, no, please stay in school. Learn all these things that you need to learn. practice, make things, fail. Like, I wish I had these tools when I was 13 years old or you know, in college. It's an incredible time, you know, and I think what we'll see is the ability to draft out ideas really quickly and iterate, create things, and then, you know, make some things traditionally, make some things non-traditionally. You know, it's an exciting, Cord Jefferson said it at the Oscars a couple years ago.
Yeah.
He's like, why are we greenlighting single $200 million films? Let's greenlight $54 million films.
Yeah.
And that is where we're headed. We're going to see a renaissance of independent cinema because all these new voices, all these creators are going to be able to do stuff with a, you know, team of about a dozen and create something quicker and be able to explore more stories.
But the key thing is something that you said, Fred, which is human in the loop, or in this case, the director's eye. Sora could not have done that on their own.
No.
We are going to be talking a little bit later when Joseph Gordon-Levitt is here this afternoon. We're going to be talking about issues around intellectual property and the role of the creator vis-a-vis you know, the outputs of AI. So I'm gonna hold on that topic since we'll talk about it later. But Fred, when we were speaking earlier, also you raised a different concern, which is about the ability of can the audience discern what is real and what's not real, and does it matter? Now, in the case of this film, of course, it's a surrealist fantasy, so we're not talking about changing the facts of history, but you do have some of those concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing some work with Stanford in a Starling lab, not Starlink, Starling lab, but it's worth looking them up because we've been doing a lot of data integrity work for a while, and I think it's probably pointing to something that all media has historically had a point of view. It's got a frame, it's been edited, and in some ways there's a trust mechanism that's been built into things like the news, which we mostly trust, journalists, we mostly trust the people that tell us these stories. I think in a lot of ways AI is accelerating a trend in recent years of that, you know, we increasingly don't know who to believe anymore, and that's, I think there's a real pessimism that can set in on that. I think there's an, you know, if anybody's seen Mountainhead on HBO recently, I think perhaps that has incepted a fear, which I felt 2 days ago as a Los Angelino on Instagram watching Bigfoot report from the protests, which was funny to me at first, then sad to me because it's a pretty scary thing was happening in LA. And also then at some point, wait, what is this media experience that we're all in? So I think in some ways AI is forcing us to reckon with this and to get used to a world where it's hard to trust the information in front of you. The work we're doing at Starling and with Stanford is we're confronting that, and we're almost saying, how do we simultaneously get thrilled about innovation? How do we simultaneously look at these creative opportunities? I'm pretty sure intuitively nobody was lost with the imagery they just watched, watching people walk through newspapers. I think there's still some creative experiences that we're doing okay with, our human intuition. But when you're staring at images that look exactly the same as something that you were used to thinking was real, that's challenging. And I think it's forcing us to think about the frameworks. I think I, as a parent who spent a lot of time apparently evangelizing about AI, I'm also very nervous about this stuff. I think misinformation is scary. I have 2 little girls. I look at my job as a parent to teach them media literacy, tech literacy, as important as sex ed and teaching them how to drive a car. So I think we're entering a new phase, and in some ways this is forcing us to pay attention. And the kind of work we're doing at Starling is actually trying to build the frameworks of how do we start creating transparent requirements for a documentary filmmaker. Like I think what you watch any filmmaker like Nick, BTS, behind the scenes footage is almost an assumption, not just because it's fun, but I think increasingly for a truth story, it's probably a requirement, or maybe it should be, or maybe that transparency in our process is the beginning of a vocabulary.
So we're out of time, but before we go, tell us what's next for the Dion McGregor films.
Well, hopefully we are, right?
Yeah, well, we've got the film that you saw. There's 2 other ones that we are making with Pippa and Marius, and then the idea is to open it up to other artists, AI artists, other filmmakers, animators, creatives, to, you know, because there's like, how many, 30 hours or something? Like how many?
Something bonkers.
There's like an insane amount of incredible stories, and there's no way that we're going to do it all and still do everything else we have to do. So yeah, we want to basically look for artists. So if you're watching this and you're an artist and interested in exploring Dion's dreams, the site is somniloquist.ai. It's kind of tough to spell, but if you look at the, you know, the program,
there's an
you'll
AI
see it.
for that too.
Yeah, so there you go.
Sounds.
Yeah, so there you go.
Great. Well, Pippa, Nick, Fred, thank you so much. We'll watch for the rest of the films.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.